The Last Duel. So, The Last Duel, this is another new film from Ridley Scott. This did actually come out before House of Gucci, but this was quite hard to find and watch, in all honesty. I did see trailers for this movie in Cineworld, like, a couple months before it came out, and I thought that looks like a cool movie. I would like to see that. And then when it did come out, it was only in, like, selected Cineworlds. It wasn't shown in Milk and Beans because I guess they just think, we're not going to put this film in that derelict town. But just last week, or the week before, they put it on Disney Plus, and I was like, okay, finally, now I can watch this movie. And after seeing House of Gucci, I wanted to see how this compared. I wanted to see if Ridley Scott did a better job with this true story than he did with that true story. Now, like House of Gucci, this does have an all-star cast. We've got Adam Driver again, sort of one of the leading roles in this movie. You've got Matt Damon, you've got Ben Affleck, and you've got Jodie Comer. Now, this is a true story. It's based on a feud between two former friends. One is a knight, one is a squire, and it's about their relationship and how it becomes, goes from friendship to, enemies. And about the sort of the love interest that's caught in between of them. Now, the squire is played by Adam Driver, the knight is played by Matt Damon, and the love interest, Jodie Comer. This film is set in France in the 1300s, so it's pretty far back. We're talking like 1360s to 1380s, like that sort of ballpark. Now, of course, this film is set in France, but everyone is speaking English. But they're not really. I don't even know. Like the accents, once again, just as we have the House of Gucci. I don't really know what they're going for here. You've got Matt Damon, who sounds like he's speaking in an American accent. You've got Jodie Comer speaking in an English accent. You've got Ben Affleck speaking in an English accent, and you've got Adam Driver speaking in an English accent. So I don't really know what they were going for here. It's once again, it's one of those where it sometimes sounds like it flows between, for Matt Damon, between like English accent, American accent, sometimes with Driver and Affleck, and I don't really know, once again, what they were going for here with the accents. I think they just need to settle on something and say this is we're all doing this accent, rather than just, it's like they're freestyling. But honestly, it's not a big issue. It's not an issue like it was in Gucci, where it went from full on Italian to like British. It's just a little thing. You might pick up on it when you watch. You might be like, oh, I don't really know what they're going for here, but fine. Now, the story of this feud and the whole love interest, they decided to tell it from three different perspectives. So the film is split into chapters. You got chapter 1, 2, and 3, and then you kind of have your finale chapter. The chapters, one is with Damon, one is with Driver, and one is with Comer. Now, initially, this is interesting for Damon and Driver because they are the first two perspectives we see. I found that interesting because you do get two different sides to the story, because they're both sort of doing different things with their lives after their initial meeting sort of at the start of the movie. So it's cool to see their perspectives on events, how they unfold, what they've really been saying about each other, sort of, away from each other, and how the feud sort of builds on both angles there. Now, this layout was certainly not what I expected. It did keep me intrigued. It kept me guessing as to how events would pan out. And it's also interesting to see how the events pan out on the other side, and like I said, you learn the different perspectives, and you learn different contributing factors as to why things have happened from in one person's perspective, and it can be due to something that's happened on the other side. And this, of course, lets you determine what's true and what isn't, and that was an interesting aspect. But ultimately, when it comes to the third perspective, which is that of Jodie Comer's, it didn't really show us anything new, because she is either with Damon or she is with Driver. There's no particular time when she's getting up to her own antics. We just get to learn a little bit more about her, but in terms of the key parts and elements of the story, we don't really learn much from her perspective. It's just that she interprets things different, such as, the dialogue will be different in the same scene, which is apparently the actual truth. It's her truth. Rather than how maybe these, Damon and Driver will see a scene where maybe they feel like, they came out looking better than they actually did in that memory, in that perspective of theirs. And the problem with that is because it was the third and final perspective, and they even sort of label it as the real truth for that chapter. It doesn't really bring any twists or surprises. It doesn't really teach you anything new. That sort of comes in the second chapter. That's where you sort of learn some crazy things. So the fact that they just showed the same thing again for the third chapter, but just from a slightly different perspective, it did kind of, it felt like the film not plummeted, but you know what I mean? It just sort of, it at least leveled out and dropped a tiny bit because it was building intrigue and interest all the way up. So when you get to the third act, you're thinking, oh my god, okay, we're really building up to something here. This could be, huge truths could come out. But no, it just sort of shows you what you've already done, and you're like, okay, fine, I guess. Like, there's nothing wrong with the act, but it didn't bring, the sucker punch, the big exciting moment that you were kind of hoping for in that third chapter that they were all building up to. And as we know, the film is called The Last Duel. The film is painting a picture and trying to build up to this final duel between Damon and Driver. We've seen that from the trailer, so it's not exactly a spoiler. So therefore, to start off with, they are trying to paint them as good friends, as brothers, in a sense. And honestly, I never really got that feeling that these guys were brothers, because it just didn't really spend enough time with them initially to show that brotherhood, that friendship. It was just sort of like, yeah, they're pally, and then they don't really see each other for a while, and then they just start to dislike each other for not a huge particular reason. So it was a bit of a shame in that sense, because that was ultimately what they were going for, and it would have been more impactful when it comes to their final duel, which I will not tell you who won, of course, or what the final outcome was. But, it would have felt more impactful if you'd known about the brotherhood, and if it felt genuine. It would have felt more tragic, more sad, if you really felt these guys had like a love for each other, a proper bromance. So ultimately, because of that, when they became enemies, it didn't really feel ultimately that meaningful. It really didn't. Yes, justified in a sense. Yes, there did feel like there was a justification between them starting to not like each other, but it didn't feel that impactful. It just felt like, that's a guy I know. He seems alright. Oh wait, actually, nah, he's a bit of a dickhead. Like, there wasn't much more to it than that, it felt. Honestly, I felt more of a bromance between Ben Affleck and Adam Driver. Ben Affleck was really good in this movie. He is not the sort of person, if you describe the role, you would think, yeah, I'm going to cast Ben Affleck for that. But it worked. It was really cool to see him in this role. He's sort of he's cousin to the king, I believe, at the time. So he's got power, he's wealthy, he's got land, he's got women, he's got all this cool stuff, and Adam Driver's his squire, and he really trusts him, and you felt their bond way more intriguing and genuine than Damon's and Driver's bond that they so-called, apparently had at the start. It was all about Affleck and Driver for me, and I felt that the most impactful, honestly, because when it comes to the last duel, you see Affleck is very nervous that he's going to lose not just his squire, but almost his best friend, the guy that's sort of been enjoying, all the great things it means to be rich and powerful in that time. Through all those years, he risks losing that friend. So I found that the bromance, even though it wasn't really meant to be the key part, I found that relationship more interesting. I think it's just because they spent more time with each other than Damon and Driver ever did. And as I said, Affleck great, Driver impeccable as always. I have not seen a bad performance from this guy in any film. He's incredible. He really is. He's one of the best, actors to come through in these past sort of 5 to 10 years. He's really blown up, obviously, these last 5 years, ever since he did Star Wars, and he's just killing it. Damon, you're always going to get a solid performance from Damon. So Damon, once again, awesome. Jodie Comer, I'm seeing more of her in things recently, and it's always, brilliant performance from her. The emotion that she brought to her character was very, very good. And the same with all the other actors, to be fair. They all brought that emotional side. You could all feel it, and they all felt pretty unique, and they were very interesting characters. But like House of Gucci, performances were good, but the structure was not. The structure for me was an issue once again. As I said, because the film is split into these chapters, from different perspectives, point of views, whatever, it feels like you go 20 to 30 minutes without seeing one of these main characters, which is a bummer. Like, you don't really see Ben Affleck much at all until you get to like Adam Driver's act, because he is his squire, so that's when you get more. So I like seeing Affleck. I thought he was a very interesting character, and it's just a shame that it wasn't, more well balanced, because you just sort of go, like I said, this a fairly considerable amount of time before you see a certain character again. And that is not to say these characters aren't getting enough screen time, because I think they all got pretty much the right amount of screen time, even though I personally would have liked more Affleck. But he wasn't like one of the main characters. He was like fourth main character after the main three. But because the film was split into these chapters, it felt like, damn, it's been a while since I've seen that character. When in reality, if it had been structured different, you would find that everyone was getting a reasonably good amount of screen time. I honestly think this would have been better with Coma as the main character. Like, start the movie off with her, build the movie around her, bring the characters into her life. Damon, Driver, Affleck, bring them all in, all these important people that are pivotal to how everything unfolds. And, just start it off with a story that's, the core is her, and then you've got these guys that are, that end up getting involved with her. I mean, ultimately in the advertising, they kind of paint the picture that this movie is about her and that she's the main character, but it honestly felt like Damon or Driver was the main character. It didn't feel like her, and even with the synopsis, it's a gripping true story of one woman's tenacity, strength, and courage to defy a nation and make history. To me, it didn't feel like she made history. It just felt like she was someone who was involved in a series of events that didn't feel that big. You know what I mean? Like, it did not feel that crazy, that influential. It didn't feel like she was, in that description, they're painting her like she's like a pioneer of something. In this film, she didn't feel like that. She just felt like someone who got involved with, serious events, but it didn't feel that influential or impactful. If this film is meant to be, based on like a legendary event, it didn't make it feel all that legendary. Ridley Scott has once again got a great idea here, a great story, great cast, great performances, but a lackluster execution and choice of style for the movie. It just hasn't worked again like it did with House of Gucci. I feel like this is done better than House of Gucci. For me, I enjoyed this film more, but once again, the main issue is the execution of this film. I know this has sounded like quite a negative review. It's just one of them. I am disappointed ultimately that it wasn't better, because I know it could have been. I know if they'd chosen a different style here. I mean, I know, I'm not a bloody filmmaker, but I've watched a lot of movies. And with true story movies, you pick a certain style and structure, and it benefits the movie entirely, because you don't really have to do much, because it's a true story, right? It's already a great story. That's why you're making a film about it, and true stories are the best stories a lot of the time. But the choice of style that he's using here, the way he's structuring the movie, the way he's editing the movies, it's not right. And I don't know if it's just, like I said in my House of Gucci review, it's just not what he's used to. It's not how he usually, the sort of movies he's making. He's making sci-fi movies. That's kind of what his legacy is built around, it feels like. So this, once again, I enjoyed this movie a lot, though. I had a good time with it. I think it's worth watching. I think the performances are outstanding once again. Really unique performances. It's kind of cool seeing actors in this time and this sort of movie, like a medieval movie. It's very interesting. Ben Affleck, Adam Driver, Jodie Comer, Matt Damon in a medieval movie. Fuck yeah, I want to see that. And it's worth watching it for that. But it could have been better. It could have been better if it's structured better. But I tell you what, I did enjoy this movie, and I did prefer it to House of Gucci. And ultimately, I would give this movie an 8 out of 10. See, it's a point better than Gucci. This is a movie that I would not be hesitant to rewatch. I don't know if I go completely out of my way to rewatch it, but if this was on late night TV, I would probably put it on in like a year's time. I haven't seen it, but what the fuck was that noise? Oh, it's the last Duel. I'm gonna watch that. But yeah, pretty good. It's on Disney Plus if you want to watch it. 2.5 hours. Dedicate an evening to it. I think you'll have a good time with it. But it's up to you whether you like the structure or not. Like I said, it does give you that little intrigue and mystery, but ultimately it does not nail what they probably were going for is an impactful and exciting, final act and ending. Thank you all for watching. If you've seen The Last Duel, do let me know what you think about it. But for now, I am Joe Squared, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.